Right. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name's Chase Howard. I'm a healthcare attorney, healthcare and business attorney. So I focus my practice on all types of healthcare businesses, mostly medical spas, alternative healthcare, integrative healthcare practices. So I stay away from a lot of the traditional medicine hospital work. And I work in the area where a lot of you are now, or a lot of you are trying to go. And it's an area that is quite gray. From state to state, there's different laws. Federally, there's different laws that apply. And there's so many new services, treatments, everything that's coming out. Understanding who can do what, how to supervise it, how to protect against it. It's all, I think, a lot to take in sometimes, on top of learning about what the science in medicine is. So my focus is really to help people like you understand how to do it, well, not how to do the medicine part, but how to do it from a legal perspective, and how to keep yourself protected at the same time. So that's how I focus my practice. I'm here based in Florida, but I work nationally through my law firm. Our law firm is full service as far as what we do and who we work with. And so our first 15 or 20 minutes, we're going to talk about the top legal threats. I actually combined my two topics a little bit, and my second topic is going to be a little different, but still kind of, I think, focused on growth and industry hurdles and things like that. I just didn't want to come up here twice and scare you, right? I'm a lawyer. I'm not wearing a suit because I don't want to be the person who you guys are in here talking about all these new things, these new devices you're taking home, the new training and education you have, and then scare you from doing it. So we're going to spend a few minutes doing that, more so from the perspective of how to identify these threats, how to prevent them, how to be a little bit more proactive in your approach so that you don't have to call me or the guy in the suit to clean things up, right? That's when it can be scarier. That's when it can be messier. So there's 5, maybe more threats, but these are kind of the 5 big threats that we typically see as healthcare lawyers when we're representing and working with clients. Regulatory bodies, patients, staff, new treatments, and then competitors. So regulatory bodies, those are the 3-letter government agencies, the Board of Medicine, the Board of Dentistry, the Board of Nursing, the FDA, the FTC, right? And any government, whether it's a state or federal agency, that is going to have oversight over your practice, over your clinic, your providers, from a licensing standpoint, permitting standpoint, scope of practice standpoint. And anytime you're in an industry that is developing new treatments and techniques, you're getting further and further and further ahead of what the law is, right? So laws in this industry generally are years behind. There's not a single definition in any Florida law, for example, that says medical spa, right? Other states have done it. Florida's not one of them. Many have not followed yet. So you either have to regulate or get regulated. And what I mean by that is setting yourself up in your practice, in your clinic, with the highest standard of protocols, procedures that you can, right? Get yourself educated. You're here doing that today, or this whole weekend. Continue to self-educate, and then continue to look at your practice, look at your clinic from the perspective of how can I do things with the highest quality of service and care? Because if you don't do that, when the industry does get regulated, you'll be at the bottom end or the back end of it, and then you'll have to kind of get yourself caught up, or you'll get hit with whatever the boards change. And when laws change in healthcare, they change very quickly. We can have a law that's proposed in January, it's signed into law in April, and then it's effective by July, right? So 6 to 7 months, and all of a sudden, your entire business model may change. So regulate yourself before you get regulated. Marketing. Anytime you are trying to bring in patients, anytime you're trying to show that you offer some sort of service, you're going to be marketing. You're going to be using, whether it's a company's language or words or your own. You have to be very careful with what you say and what you promise, what you say something does or doesn't do, if it's FDA approved or not. And so, good example is with a lot of the weight loss drugs that have exploded over the last year or so. If you're not utilizing actual language from the manufacturer and you're maybe just getting products from a compound pharmacy, right? The way in which you sell or market to a patient could severely impact you and hurt you if the FDA, for example, or the FTC, has a report and says, hey, your clinic is saying all these things, making all these claims, right? So review your marketing. Make sure the language is clear. You don't want to overpromise. You don't want to say something's FDA approved when it's not FDA approved. If you're using a treatment or a service or something that's off-label from an FDA approval, you need to say that. You have to disclose it and then follow up on that and any sort of patient consent. And then licensure. Making sure you're appropriately licensed to perform the services, making sure your staff members who are performing are appropriately licensed, to the extent that there's a facility license in your state for either the person who's providing the service or as a clinic in general, right? As I mentioned, Florida doesn't have any sort of medical spa or medical spa license, but there's a variety of facility permits, licenses obviously for the hands-on providers. So making sure that you're up to date on those, keeping those up and registered. Because the Board of Medicines, Board of Nursing, Board of Dentistry, Department of Health, they will come down on you. If you get a report for something and they come in and then find out you're not appropriately licensed, not only will they hit you for that first inquiry they came in for, but then they'll get you on the licensure part as well. Patients. So obviously patients are the lifeblood of what you do, right? You don't have a business without patients, right? But you could lose your business because of your patients. And what I mean by that is, you're still serving patients from a healthcare perspective. These are, medical treatments, dental treatments. It's not just a sale of a product or a good, right? You're still working with the patient, although many times I even refer to them as clients or even customers in this space, right? It's seen very differently for whatever reason because of how things are being marketed to them and how you're positioning your clinic and how you're branding, right? But at the end of the day, it's a patient. And so back to the high-level standard of care, any sort of bad outcome, if you're not appropriately protected, if you're not appropriately trained, if you're not providing the correct and full informed consent, you could have a slip-up, and if you're not insured or if you're operating as a clinic without insurance, that certainly could be a major legal threat to you as far as dealing with a lawsuit, a claim of malpractice, even a claim of negligence, right? So more for you to do. Document, document, document. Make sure your forms are all the way revised. They're applicable to the services and treatments you're providing, to the people who are providing them, and that you have a process and protocol in place so that every single patient you have that comes in goes through that same process. Nothing slips through the cracks. That way, if there is a bad outcome or alleged bad outcome, you have documentation to prove it, to defend your case, and to actually make sure that it doesn't impact your business. And then you have kind of the entitlement aspect of it. And from a threat perspective, that's when someone maybe doesn't feel as though they've received the service that they should have. Maybe you did give them the service that they were going to get, and they've received everything. But at the end of the day, people just feel a certain way, right? And you'll deal with things like bad and negative reviews. You'll deal with patients that are harassing you or harassing staff who are rude, right? And it's more so a threat, I think, from the review side, dealing with them personally if they come in and are rude or otherwise, ways to handle that and may not impact your business too much, but it's the review side of things. And that's where I think you want to be very careful in responding to those reviews. But obviously work on it with patients that are happy, right? Bump your reviews up. I'm not going to get into all of that necessarily, but that could be a threat, right? So addressing any sort of those issues up front comes down obviously to your customer service and how you deal with it, and then making a business decision, right? If somebody comes in and complains because they don't feel as though their service was 100%, or they didn't get it, or they didn't get the results that they wanted, try to take a step back and look at it from the perspective of how might this impact the business? Do I want to try to make them happy by providing a refund or providing a credit or whatever it may be, right, that's reasonable, or am I going to fight it? And then what's that going to turn into? Staff. So I know there's a lot of staff members in here today, so I'll take it easy. But at the end of the day, there's an employer and an employee relationship, and that creates potential for liability. when you have a staff member leaving, when you have a staff member that's maybe going out and going to open up their own clinic, whatever it may be, there's always potential risk for somebody to take patient information, somebody to be a competitor with you, somebody to just not be a high performer or follow your protocols, right? And so from many different angles, the people inside could hurt you, right? Intentionally or unintentionally. Contractually, you can certainly defend against that and protect yourself against that, having well-written policies, thorough policies, things like how they interact on social media or how they interact with patients, what you expect of them, right? So the more that I think you as a practice owner or clinic owner or employer can share with your staff members about what you expect, what is okay to do, what isn't okay to do, I think certainly helps from a threat perspective to minimize those in the future. Lack of communication certainly always leads to more issues. And then new treatments. So anytime there's a new device or a new type of treatment, and I'll go back to some of the weight loss drugs, right? Understanding how to deliver those treatments, how to deliver those medications. Make sure you're educated on it, right? That's the first step, because if you're not, you're not always certain about what the outcome might be. If you're not educated on what the background of the science is on it, then who can perform it, right? And that all kind of snowballs into itself as far as licensure, how you're marketing, what happens with patients and bad outcomes, right? So anytime there's a new treatment, certainly it's great to be first to market with it and the first one to offer it in your area, but make sure you're educated on it. Make sure you understand it, and then make sure you've done those things that we've talked about as far as policies, protocols, procedures, to have your staff, have your providers, have you understand what it is, how to provide it, what happens if there's a bad outcome, right, and how to market it appropriately. And then competitors. So this is obviously an outside threat. I've seen it a number of times where somebody will call me and say, hey, Department of Health just showed up and they want to investigate and they want to ask me where all my licenses are, and I have everything, but where did this person come from, right? Could have come from a patient, just they make a complaint. Could have come from a former employee, but oftentimes it's a competitor, right? Someone who's maybe jealous of the fact that you're in their area, seemingly doing well, your social media is booming, right? You've got all the patients, they don't. So I see it all the time. I see complaints that get lodged and filed, and these agencies and these boards have to follow up on them, right? So it becomes a nuisance, but it's something that potentially, if you're not totally up and in line with things, it could uncover an issue for you. And certainly you can't do anything to stop the competitor from the feelings of jealousy or acting on it, but you can make sure that internally you have everything in order. So if something does come at you, you're bulletproof, right? Social media kind of goes in line with the patients as far as bad reviews and things like that. You may have people who are haters, right? Haters online. Learn to love the haters, right? Because it's just going to prove to you that you're doing something right. They're jealous. They're spending more time focused on you than you are focused on anything else. You're doing something right. But certainly to the extent that people are being abusive or otherwise, legally there's certain routes you can take to defend yourself or to be a little bit more proactive with that. And then lastly, theft from competitors. Really theft from patients, staff, competitors, otherwise, whoever it may be. And I'm talking about things like your advertising and marketing, your content that you're creating. I'm sure you've seen it. How many people have seen the same video posted over and over again and there's no credit there, right? That's theft in the simplest of terms. Somebody's created something, they've got some sort of intellectual property right in that, and now somebody else is using it. Maybe they think it's harmless, but it's going to benefit them, they're not giving credit, or they're just completely knocking it off because they've seen, hey, you've got all these likes or all these followers or all these patients, and maybe if I take it and act like it's mine, I'm going to get that as well. So a number of ways to protect that. From an intellectual property standpoint, if you're creating content, certainly watermarks, to the extent that you have something that can be copywritten, enforcing your rights on that. If you have a special logo or name, trademark protections, whether it's on a state or federal level, those types of registrations and legal filings, you can certainly set yourself up to have a greater chance as far as enforcement goes. And so From an employee standpoint too, actually, one last thing on that, so not competitors, but theft, in a contract, if you have, business plans, if you have, business know-how, a way of doing things, your protocols, always a good idea to have a policy or a contract that might say something to the effect of, anything that we've created or taught you, right, it's ours, or it's confidential, right? And then that way you have some sort of teeth if someone steals something, tries to knock it off and take it from you. So I'll be back in a few. I know I've got a couple minutes left, so happy to take a few questions. But these are kind of the big picture legal threats, some things that you may not be thinking of, but certainly as a lawyer, I see it all. I see the dirtiness of it. It happens, and hopefully it's a little bit insightful to you, from here. So, thank you.